The story begins with a bustling city street filled with people going about their day. Suddenly, a critical disaster alert pings on everyone's phone, urging immediate evacuation for citizens near Inwang Mountain, where monsters have reportedly appeared. This alarming message isn't isolated to just one area. Similar notifications pop up for people in different parts of the city. Curiosity piqued, a streamer decides to investigate the situation firsthand, streaming live to his audience. Despite showing clear footage of the monsters, the viewers remain skeptical, dismissing it as a prank or a clever visual effect. However, the skepticism is shattered when one of the monsters suddenly reacts, startling both the streamer and his audience. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to our protagonist, Hoyong, who is also watching the stream. He is puzzled by how realistic the video appears and wonders why he keeps receiving these alert messages. Lee is skeptical about the monster sightings, attributing them to the recent surge in fake videos circulating online. Despite the mounting evidence, Lee finds it hard to believe that actual monsters have emerged on Earth. As Hoyong is going about his business, he suddenly comes face to face with a monstrous creature, sending a jolt of shock through him. The sight of the creature fills him with fear, and his immediate instinct is to flee. However, to his surprise, the monster begins to act in a friendly and endearing manner, almost pleading for assistance. Despite the creature's attempts to appear harmless, Lee is still too frightened to stay. Just as he is about to make his escape, the monster does something unexpected. It shows Lee a picture, presumably of its family. This unexpected gesture touches something deep within Lee, sparking a sense of empathy and compassion. Moved by the creature's display of vulnerability, Lee decides to set aside his fear and help. Grateful for his assistance, the monster rewards Lee with a mysterious silver goblin's pill, promising that it will grant him a special ability once consumed. Perplexed by the gift, Lee is unsure of its true nature or purpose. As Lee contemplates the strange turn of events, he is interrupted by a news bulletin on TV. The report reveals that enormous, tower-like structures have begun appearing all over the world, with military personnel mysteriously vanishing upon entering them. This shocking development adds another layer of mystery and danger to an already perplexing situation, leaving Lee bewildered by the strange events unfolding around him. Suddenly, an explosion rocks the area outside Hoyong's house. People gather, shocked to find a towering structure blocking the road. Lee, too, witnesses the sudden appearance of a tower nearby. Intrigued and perhaps sensing a connection, Lee decides to consume the silver goblin's pill he had received earlier. As soon as Lee ingests the pill, his body is enveloped in a luminous blue aura. A window materializes before him, indicating that he has attained Sage status, which offers the optimal survival guide for his current circumstances. Additionally, a book materializes in front of Lee. Upon opening the book, another window appears, informing Lee that the door to the end of days is set to open in 15 days. He is given a quest to enhance his strength, cardio, and kendo skills. Determined to prepare for the impending challenge, Lee follows the guide's recommendations diligently. Each day, Lee embarks on a rigorous training regimen. Mornings consist of a 10-kilometer run, followed by kendo practice in the afternoon and weight training at night. After diligently adhering to his daily routine for 14 days, Hoyong made the decision to resign from his training regimen. His choice raised eyebrows, with someone even questioning his sanity. Despite the doubts of others, Lee remained steadfast, believing that people could think what they wanted about him. He was singularly focused on the looming end of days. As the countdown to the apocalyptic event reached its climax, Lee found himself abruptly transported to a dense forest. This unexpected turn of events left him bewildered, as it was not what he had anticipated. To his surprise, a sword materialized before him, and a mysterious window appeared, signaling the start of a new phase. The system launched into a tutorial, guiding Lee through the initial steps of this unknown game-like scenario. Following this, a notification indicated that an aptitude test had been conducted, and based on the results, Lee had been designated as a combat swordsman. This revelation opened up a detailed status window, presenting Lee with a wealth of information to digest and process. The sheer volume of data left him astonished, realizing that this new world held far more complexity than he had ever imagined. As Hoyong, at level 1, lifts the sword, a surge of excitement courses through him upon seeing his stats. He recognizes that this moment marks the true beginning of his journey. A window materializes, presenting him with two objectives: survive in the forest for 60 minutes or locate the exit and escape. Viewing this as a tutorial period designed to help him acclimate to the game's mechanics, Lee contemplates his next move. Another window promptly appears, introducing the concept of the Sage's status. This feature assures Lee that it will provide him with the best strategies for survival in his current circumstances. The guide accompanying this status advises Lee to utilize the entire 60-minute tutorial to dispatch as many monsters as possible. It warns against pursuing the second objective, suggesting that it may impede his progress. Lee ponders the potential utility of the Sage's status window in this early stage of his journey. Lee Hoyong ponders the Sage's status window, considering its directive for him to exercise as a prescient move by the system. He internalizes the guide's counsel, emphasizing the importance of hunting monsters and avoiding escape from the forest. As the tutorial commences, a level 1 raccoon monster emerges. Initially charmed by its appearance, Lee is caught off guard when the raccoon transforms into a fierce aggressor, lunging at him. Lee responds swiftly, dispatching the creature with a single, well-aimed strike of his blade. Victorious, Lee gains experience points from the battle. Reflecting on the encounter, Lee surmises that the ease of his victory likely stems from the raccoon being a tutorial creature. He calculates that each use of basic swordsmanship consumes 2 MP, and with only 10 MP at his disposal, he can employ this skill 5 more times. This realization underscores the importance of MP conservation as he continues his monster hunting endeavors. After dispatching the raccoon monsters one by one with his basic swordsmanship, Lee Hoyong earns experience points, gradually honing his skills. With each triumphant battle, he inches closer to his goal, until finally, he ascends to level 2. The victory not only boosts his morale, but also restores his health and mana points to full capacity. A notification pops up, informing Lee that he will receive points upon leveling up, which he can allocate to enhance his attributes. Currently, he has 2 points at his disposal. Excitement bubbles within him as he contemplates the possibilities for improvement. The timing of his level up couldn't have been better, as his mana was nearly depleted. However, his elation is short-lived as the window displaying his progress begins to fade away. In its place, a new window materializes, announcing the adjustment of his player level back to 1. As Lee grapples with this sudden setback, another window appears, introducing the concept of the weight of knowledge. This revelation explains that due to possessing the Sage's status window, Lee will progress through levels at a slower pace compared to other players. This unexpected twist leaves Lee reeling, realizing that there is a price to pay for the unique advantages granted by his status. Devastated by the loss of his hard-earned level, Lee Hoyong is left bewildered, wondering when he will be able to level up again. However, his dismay turns to astonishment when he checks his stats and discovers that his stamina, strength, and other abilities have increased. Not only that, but he also has 2 points to allocate from leveling up. This revelation surprises him, leading him to consider that instead of being a setback, this could be an overpowered ability. This realization fills Lee with happiness, knowing that despite the setback, he has gained something truly valuable. Lee Hoyong continues his relentless pursuit of the raccoon monsters, determined to hone his skills and progress further. His efforts are rewarded as he levels up once again, only to have his level adjusted back to 1 shortly afterward. Despite this setback, Lee notices that his stats and remaining points are still increasing steadily, providing him with a glimmer of hope and motivation. As he reflects on his progress, Lee realizes that each level requires increasingly more experience to attain. However, he also acknowledges that with his current stats, it is more efficient for him to focus on improving his attributes than to solely pursue leveling up. With 4 choices available to enhance his stats, Lee deliberates on the most beneficial path to take. While strength and agility would bolster his combat prowess, he recognizes that sensitivity is crucial for his current situation. Therefore, he decides to allocate his points to increase his sensitivity level by 4. Despite initially underestimating the raccoon monsters, Lee finds them to be surprisingly manageable. Their lack of strength compared to other tutorial monsters allows him to defeat them effortlessly, even with his default stats. This realization reinforces his belief in the effectiveness of his current strategy. The guide's directive for Lee Hoyong is clear. Maximize the 60-minute tutorial by defeating as many monsters as possible. Lee's challenge lies in locating enough raccoon monsters within this time frame. However, his heightened sensitivity stat makes this task considerably easier. Notably, Lee begins to perceive a subtle energy, or qi, with his sensitivity stat now at 20. Unexpectedly, a notification declares that Lee has successfully vanquished all the monsters, triggering the activation of a hidden quest. A level 2 raccoon monster suddenly emerges behind Lee, launching a swift attack. Lee is momentarily surprised by the monster's speed, but he quickly regains his composure. Dodging the monster's next strike, Lee swiftly retaliates, defeating it with a single, decisive blow. Having emerged victorious against the boss and completed the hidden quest, Lee's efforts are rewarded with a sum of gold. Remarkably, upon completing the tutorial, Lee finds himself at level 7, a testament to his skill and determination in overcoming the challenges presented to him. Lee Hoyong's senses are jolted as he realizes he's been transported to an unfamiliar location, surrounded by a group of other individuals. A sudden announcement echoes through the space, welcoming them as the successful participants of the tutorial. This place is revealed to be the lobby of the tower, specifically the C-2567 region. The revelation surprises Lee and the others, prompting a wave of confusion and astonishment. Surveying the group, Lee counts 14 men and 11 women, leading him to speculate whether everyone present had also completed the tutorial and been brought here. The atmosphere is charged with panic and uncertainty, understandable given the sudden and drastic changes that have unfolded in the world overnight. Lee reflects on how, had he not known about the impending end of the world beforehand, he might have been just as panicked as the rest. Despite the chaos, Lee manages to steady himself, resolving to navigate the challenges ahead and emerge from the tower alive. Amidst the murmurs of confusion, a girl speaks up, voicing the collective query, "What is this place?" In a surreal twist, a bunny materializes and introduces itself, explaining to the bewildered group that they are now in the Tower of the End. The sudden appearance of the bunny, Kum Kum, leaves everyone in a state of shock and disbelief. As Kum Kum introduces himself as a level 55 entity, the astonishment among the gathered individuals only deepens. Questions swirl in the minds of the group, with some speculating if Kum Kum is the one who brought them to this mysterious place. Observing the growing panic among the group, Kum Kum calmly assesses the situation, guessing that such a reaction is only natural given the circumstances. Amidst the uncertainty, Lee Hoyong steps forward, mustering the courage to voice the question on everyone's mind. What are they supposed to do now that they are here? In response, Kum Kum acknowledges the gravity of Lee's question. With a solemn expression, he reveals that all 22 players, including Lee, will be embarking on a perilous journey where their lives are at stake. This revelation sends shockwaves through the group, the weight of the situation sinking in. Kum Kum goes on to explain that the tower is not just a random structure. It currently houses all of humanity. The players must band together and tackle each floor's mission to ascend the tower. However, when Lee asks the crucial question of whether they can return to their normal lives after reaching the top, Kum Kum's response is dishearteningly uncertain. Even he does not know what lies beyond the tower's peak. Lee Hoyong, seeking clarity, questions Kum Kum about the purpose behind scaling the tower's heights. Kum Kum responds with a philosophical query, questioning the need to seek meaning in every endeavor. He then delivers a sobering message, stating that those who fail to ascend will be eliminated. Adding to the gravity of the situation, Kum Kum reveals that a significant number of individuals were already eliminated during the tutorial phase. This revelation stuns Lee, prompting him to reflect on his previous oversight. While he understood the tutorial nature of their earlier experiences, he realizes that many may have struggled to even complete that initial stage. Kum Kum, sensing the tension in the air, poses a bold challenge to the group. He asks if anyone is brave enough to attempt to defeat him, stating that his defeat is necessary for them to return home. To sweeten the deal, he mentions a special reward for the one who manages to achieve this feat despite Kum Kum's seemingly unassuming appearance. Lee sees through the facade. He recognizes the danger in underestimating a level 55 opponent, acknowledging that he stands no chance in a direct confrontation. Lee Hoyong, faced with a perplexing dilemma, decides to adopt a cautious approach and observe the unfolding events. However, His contemplation is abruptly interrupted by the appearance of a window, bearing a directive from the guide to assist the lower floor manager, Kum, in returning home. Puzzled by this unexpected instruction, Lee ponders its implications. Could it mean that he is supposed to attack the seemingly harmless rabbit? Despite his reservations, Lee considers that following the guide's instructions has always proven beneficial in the past. However, the current situation raises doubts in his mind. He wonders if obeying the guide's directive, which seems suspicious given the circumstances, is truly the right course of action. As Lee wrestles with these conflicting thoughts, another individual bravely steps forward, volunteering to confront Kum. Determined to take matters into his own hands, the man launches an attack. However, his bravado quickly turns to shock as Kum transforms into a ferocious beast and effortlessly incapacitates him with a single devastating blow. The sudden and brutal display of power sends shockwaves through the group, triggering a panicked scramble for safety. Amidst the chaos, Lee finds himself at a loss for what to do next. The guide's persistent instructions to assist Kum now seem increasingly dubious, prompting Lee to question the guide's intentions for the first time. Suddenly, the sage's status window is triggered, revealing two abilities. The first is the sage's eye, which allows Lee Hoyong to view the status windows of others. The second is the guide, which will be sent to Lee at a later time. Surprised by this new revelation, Lee wonders why these abilities are manifesting all of a sudden. As Lee examines Kum through the sage's eye, he realizes the truth. With a smirk, he declares his intention to fight Kum. Confident that the guide was not deceiving him, Lee prepares for the confrontation. However, his decision is met with concern from a woman who warns him of the danger. Other participants join her in trying to dissuade Lee from the duel. Despite the warnings, Lee reassures them that he has a plan. As the duel commences, Kum wastes no time and strikes Lee with full force. Lee braces himself for the impact, determined to face the challenge head-on. Lee Hoyong is puzzled by Kum's statement, as he is certain there are 25 people in the room, not 24 as Kum claimed. Initially, Lee considers it a simple mistake, but he soon realizes the truth. The horror of facing a level 55 monster and the fear that it could eliminate a participant were intentional. Kum intentionally stated the wrong number because there are only 24 actual people present. The 25th person was a hologram created by Kum. Furthermore, Kum himself is a hologram with no actual stats. With this revelation, Lee swiftly defeats Kum, earning a stat point in the process. The revelation shocks everyone present, who had believed Kum to be real. A man named Kim Seong steps forward, commenting that it was a waste for Lee to have received the stat point. He claims that Lee was merely lucky, implying that had he realized Kum was a hologram, he would have taken action himself. Lee Hoyong confronts Kim Seong, seeking clarification on his comment about it being a waste. Kim Seong explains that Lee is still at level 1 despite completing the tutorial, suggesting that Lee either avoided hunting monsters or was too weak to defeat any. This revelation surprises Lee, prompting him to question whether Kim Seong's words are born out of arrogance or genuine concern. As Lee absorbs the stat point, Kim Seong becomes visibly annoyed. Lee, reflecting on his past experiences, decides that it would be wise to steer clear of individuals like Kim Seong. However, he wonders how long he can maintain this strategy. Just then, an announcement is made regarding the distribution of starting gold to participants. The gold can be used in a shop, and additional gold will be awarded based on the number of monsters each participant hunted during the tutorial. The highest amount of shared gold in this area is 7,400. The group is taken aback by the announcement. Kim Junsong expresses admiration for whoever came first, acknowledging their impressive achievement. It is revealed that Kim Junsong has 1,500 gold, while Kim Song has 1,300 gold. However, the player with the most gold and who came first is Lee Hoyong. Despite this, Lee has no intention of revealing this information to the others, especially considering one person's jealousy over a mere stat point. The shop window opens, offering 3 main options for spending gold: buying items, leveling up skills, or increasing stats. Lee decides to increase his strength, stamina, and agility to 20, evening them out with sensitivity. He also purchases some clothes, feeling that his gym uniform is no longer suitable. Chai Yiziel approaches Lee and asks for advice. Lee is surprised, questioning why she would seek advice from a level 1 player. Chai Yiziel explains that she was impressed not only by Li's level, but also by his bravery. Li Hoyong is able to see Chai Yiziel's stats, but he chooses not to reveal this to her. Instead, he asks Chai Yiziel how much gold she has. Chai Yiziel replies that she has 800 gold. Li Hoyong thinks that Chai Yiziel is honest, but he knows he needs to keep his use of a cheat code hidden. Li Hoyong then asks Chai Yiziel if she likes exercising. Chai Yiziel responds that she doesn't mind walking. Li Hoyong suggests that she should invest in increasing her stamina stat, as it is likely not very high. He explains that if she lacks stamina, she won't be able to use items for long, despite spending gold on them. Chai Yiziel decides to follow Li Hoyong's advice and thanks him for it. The announcement then states that the first floor mission will commence soon, and participants are required to form parties of 3. Players without a party would be assigned to a random one, and they were given 30 minutes. Hearing this, Li Hoyong anticipates a group mission, but it arrives sooner than he expected. Following Kim Junsong's suggestion, participants begin revealing their classes and forming teams with desired players. Chai Yiziel asks Li Hoyong to team up, and he agrees, making her his first party member. Li sees no reason to refuse a healer's request. Other participants also seek to join parties with members of their level. Li ponders whether his level 1 status as a combat swordsman might be unattractive, considering the relaxed attitude of level 4 players. As everyone else finalizes their parties, only a few people remain ungrouped. Li notices a couple of other unassigned participants and wonders if he should approach them to form a full party of 3. However, he hesitates, unsure if they would want to team up with a low-level player like him. The tension mounts as the deadline for forming parties draws near. The announcement declares that the 30-minute window for forming parties has elapsed, and incomplete parties will now be filled randomly. With that settled, the first mission begins. The scene shifts to the forest, where Li Hoyong contemplates his luck with his party. Their third member is Kim Seong. Li wonders if Kim will cooperate with the party, but he realizes that whether it's possible or not is beside the point. He needs to make it work in order to survive in this challenging environment. The second mission is to take down the Kobold tribe within a 12-hour time limit. Upon seeing the tribe, Kim Seong declares that he will handle the kobolds and advises Li Hoyong not to interfere. Li reminds Kim that this is a team mission, but Kim dismisses him, claiming Li is riding on his coattails. Li retorts that he will indeed do so and observe Kim's skills. Deciding to follow Kim's lead for now, they proceed. Chai Yiziel worries if the team can complete the mission without any issues. As they advance, Kim becomes increasingly frustrated by the bugs in the area. Li, noticing the abundance of bugs in the mountainous region, agrees. Chai Yiziel expresses concern about the strength of the kobold monsters, wondering if their team is strong enough to handle them. Li reassures her, saying they'll find a way to succeed. Li Hoyong tells Chai Yiziel that while there's a chance they're stronger than the raccoon monsters, they should still be cautious as the kobold monsters could be tougher. He reminds her that they are in the Tower of the End, so they need to be on guard. However, Li is shocked to see that the kobolds are level 5 monsters, significantly stronger than the raccoon monsters. Chai Yiziel agrees, noting the obvious strength difference, and asks Li what they should do next. Li suggests they first scout the surroundings for more kobolds. But before they can act, Kim Seong unexpectedly jumps towards the kobold monsters and attacks. Chai Yiziel and Li are surprised by his boldness. The kobold monster withstands Kim Seong's attack, leaving Li astonished that Kim would engage the monster alone in such a reckless manner. As they watch, Li realizes that Kim's attack was a diversion, allowing him to gauge the kobold's strength. Li decides they should join the fight but stay on the defensive until they understand the monster's abilities better. Chai Yiziel agrees, and they cautiously approach the kobolds, ready to engage in battle. Li Hoyong is surprised by Kim Seong's stubbornness, but is relieved to sense no other kobolds nearby. Chai Yiziel steps forward to assist Kim Seong, healing him from behind as he continues to attack the kobold monster. Li Hoyong observes that the kobold is definitely a challenge worthy of their levels, but with Chai Yiziel's help, Kim Seong might be able to defeat it alone. However, when Li uses his Sage's Eye ability, he is shocked to see that their attacks are doing minimal damage compared to the monster's strength. He wonders if the monster has any weaknesses. Just then, the guide window appears, informing Li that kobolds are passive monsters that do not attack unless provoked. Realizing that Kim Se-young has needlessly provoked the creature, Lee checks another section of the guide and discovers something else. Then we witness Kim Se-young triggering his special move, Stone Fist, but the kobold dodges his attack, causing Kim Se-young to hit a tree instead, which breaks off. Enraged, the kobold retaliates, and another kobold joins in the attack. Kim Se-young realizes he's in trouble and wonders why Lee Hoyong isn't helping him. He turns around to find Lee Hoyong missing. As the second kobold prepares to attack Kim Se-young, Chai Yiziel steps forward and tries to strike the kobold with her sword. However, the kobold remains unfazed, and Chai Yiziel trips and falls to the ground. The kobold then focuses on her, readying to strike. In that critical moment, Lee Hoyong throws a fruit at the kobold, slicing it with precision and taking it down instantly. Chai Yiziel is relieved and grateful that Lee Hoyong saved her just in time. On the other hand, Lee Hoyong notices that while the bugs ate the fruit, they avoided certain ones. Sensing something amiss, he consults the guide, which reveals that these apples are poisonous, and kobolds are vulnerable to poison. Realizing that the apples are the key to the level 1 mission, Lee Hoyong decides to use them strategically. He checks on Chai Yiziel, who thanks him for his help. Lee Hoyong remarks that he didn't anticipate another kobold being drawn by Kim Se-young's actions, acknowledging that it could have been dangerous if he had been a bit late. Chai Yiziel reassures him, stating that he arrived in time to save them both. Meanwhile, a frustrated Kim Se-young questions Lee Hoyong's whereabouts during the critical moment, accusing him of hiding in a corner when the situation became dangerous. He mentions that after he had landed a few hits on the monster, then Lee Hoyong swoops in and lands the final blow. Confused by Kim Se-young's accusations, Lee Hoyong wonders why Kim Se-young is speaking nonsense. Frustrated, Kim Se-young storms off. Lee Hoyong watches him leave, thinking that Kim Se-young might be acting irrationally. The scene shifts to the kobold village, where Kim Se-young is once again facing the monsters alone. Meanwhile, Chai Yiziel and Lee Hoyong effortlessly take down the kobolds one by one. Despite being hit by the kobolds, Kim Se-young keeps fighting back, refusing to fall behind. He watches in shock as Chai Yiziel and Lee Hoyong handle the monsters with ease. Kim Se-young struggles against the kobolds and calls out for help. Seeing this, Lee Hoyong swiftly takes down the two monsters that were overwhelming Kim Se-young. Then, Lee Hoyong tells Kim Se-young that he took over the coattail ride in Kim Se-young's place for a bit. Surprised by Lee Hoyong's actions, Kim Se-young becomes happy and starts calling Lee Hoyong sir. Both Lee Hoyong and Chai Yiziel are shocked to hear this. A window then appears, stating that Lee Hoyong's team has cleared the mission. After clearing the mission, Lee Hoyong's party returns to the lobby. Kim Se-young is frustrated that a level 1 player helped him and that he called Lee Hoyong sir. On the other hand, Chai Yiziel congratulates Lee Hoyong on raising his level. She notices that there is nobody else here yet, indicating that their team is the first one to clear the first mission. Lee Hoyong tells Chai Yiziel that their team cleared the mission faster than others because they luckily managed to find the kobold's weakness. Chai Yiziel credits Lee Hoyong's observational skills, as she never could have thought of using the poison. Lee Hoyong tells Chai Yiziel that without the team's support, they wouldn't have cleared the mission. However, he feels like a fraud. Meanwhile, the other parties are also returning. It's Kim Junsong and Seo Juno's party. Lee Hoyong thinks that they must have found the poisonous apples too. He wonders if the other parties will make it back safely. Another party arrives, but only 2 members have returned. Worried, Chai Yiziel asks about the third person. The girl from the party explains that only 2 members were able to make it back. An announcement follows, stating that the first level mission has been completed by all parties. Shocked, Chai Yiziel shouts that 1 person still hasn't arrived back yet. Another announcement reveals that a total of 6 parties returned alive, but 8 players have failed to return. Lee Hoyong had expected that it would be hard for everyone to make it back. He wonders how many players will be eliminated before they reach the top of the tower. The system begins calculating results for the level 1 mission, announcing that the parties who made it out alive in one piece, and the party that cleared the first level first, will each receive 1,000 gold. It turns out that Lee Hoyong receives 2,000 gold coins for both bonuses, which he feels is a bit lacking compared to the tutorial. However, gold is a kind of insurance for Lee Hoyong's future survival, so he knows he must save as much as he can. While Lee Hoyong is checking his stats window and thinking about survival, Someone suddenly asks which party took first place. Lee Hoyong hears it, thinks for a moment, and decides to reveal it this time. The second party already knows, so there's no point in hiding it. Just as he's about to speak, Seong interrupts arrogantly, declaring that it was their party who came first. Seong tells everyone not to feel bad since it was an obvious result. The other party members are shocked to hear that Seong's group supposedly finished first. Seeing their reactions, Seong acts like a delinquent, asking if they're upset because he took first place. One of the members quickly denies it, intimidated by his attitude. Lee Hoyong, observing this, recalls how Seong had been defeated earlier by those kobolds. Still, he figures this situation might draw attention away from himself, or so he thinks. The others begin whispering about Lee Hoyong, surprised that he managed to place first even though he's only level 2. A black-haired player glares at him angrily, claiming Lee Hoyong got 2,000 gold for nothing. They all ask if he doesn't feel bad about that. Now, everyone's eyes are fixed on Lee Hoyong, the level 2 player who completed the mission and ranked first. Hearing their chatter, Yiziel tries to explain that it was Lee Hoyong who discovered the kobold's weakness to poison. However, Lee Hoyong stops her, saying it's fine since they wouldn't listen anyway. Yiziel insists on telling the truth, but Lee Hoyong replies that he'll have to show them. Yiziel doesn't understand what he means by that. Kim Junsong claps to regain everyone's attention, telling them to calm down and focus on survival. Junsong is level 8, with the class Archie, making him one of the highest level players in the region. Seo Juno clenches his fist and encourages everyone to stay strong. Juno, also level 8, is a combat swordsman, another top-tier class in the area. He reminds everyone that they must keep going for the sake of those who lost their lives. Their motivational words shift the mood. People stop panicking and begin to refocus. Just as hope returns, the blue flames on the torches suddenly turn a dark reddish-black, shocking everyone. The system displays multiple warnings, and the tension instantly rises again. Lee Hoyong, too, is startled by what he sees. Then, a new announcement begins. The survival rate for Region C-2067's first level is below average, so a penalty mission will be activated. Panic spreads among the players as they hear this. The system informs them that the penalty mission will begin shortly. Lee Hoyong wonders what the mission could be about. The system then declares that everyone must choose one candidate in their mind, and the player who receives the most votes will carry out the death mission. The timer for voting is set to 5 minutes. That's when everyone realizes that if they don't choose anyone, they'll automatically vote for themselves. It quickly becomes clear that being chosen here means certain death. Fear floods the group as time ticks down. Yiziel keeps her composure and tells everyone that if they simply wait and vote for themselves, no one will have to face the death mission. Some begin to understand her logic, but one guy argues that doing so might make everyone eligible instead. With only 2 minutes and 15 seconds left, the players grow increasingly anxious. The clock keeps ticking, down to 1 minute and 31 seconds, when suddenly, one of the players points at Lee Hoyong, drawing everyone's attention toward him. It turns out that Juno has voted for Lee Hoyong as the candidate for the penalty mission. Yiziel becomes extremely worried and saddened after seeing this and shouts that it is too cruel. Juno is speechless, realizing that his vote is being displayed above Lee Hoyong's head. Someone suddenly yells that no one ever said the voting would be anonymous. Juno apologizes to Lee Hoyong, but explains that choosing someone was necessary. Lee Hoyong remains silent for a moment, then finally breaks the silence, saying that he did expect this outcome given the atmosphere, but he is still taken aback. He admits that he doesn't want to die. After all, Yiziel insists that it's not too late. If everyone votes for themselves and Lee Hoyong votes for Juno, it might work out. But Lee Hoyong shakes his head, replying that it won't work, claiming that Leo Jichiel had a point. They don't know whether that plan will succeed or not. The trust among them has already been broken. As time ticks away, the votes above Lee Hoyong's head increase one by one. With only 12 seconds left, Lee Hoyong realizes there must be several reasons behind it, but the biggest one is that he's a low-level player. They've lost the very notion of a society where the strong should protect the weak. Yiziel grows furious at everyone present, calling them cruel and asking how they can do such a thing. The crowd's minds are in chaos. They shout back at her, asking what else they were supposed to do. If they hadn't voted, they would have died instead. The group begins revealing their true nature. One of the girls comments that Lee Hoyong would have died anyway, given his level. masks fall, and people expose their real selves. As the final moments approach, Seong smirks, apologizes mockingly to Lee Hoyong, and votes for him too. It is a cruel reminder that the end of the world truly has come. The timer runs out, and the system announces that all votes have been cast. A portal to the death mission begins to open. Lee Hoyong stands before it, leaving everyone wondering if what they're seeing is real. Yiziel bursts into tears as she watches Lee Hoyong walk towards the portal. Meanwhile, while Seong laughs, saying that if Lee Hoyong is gone, his problems are solved, calling himself a genius. With faces of guilt and relief behind him, he has no choice but to climb his own Calvary, except that at the top of it lies not death, but an opportunity for him to grow even stronger. The guide informs Lee Hoyong that participating in the death mission is recommended, claiming that he has a high chance of success and that a satisfactory reward awaits him. Lee Hoyong steps into the portal with a calm smile on his face. In the dungeon, everyone is waiting anxiously. Seong and Yiziel are sitting together when Junsong approaches Yiziel, asking if she is feeling all right. Though their time together was short, they were still companions who watched each other's backs, so Junsong feels regretful about parting ways like this. Hearing that, Seong, acting arrogantly as usual, remarks that Lee Hoyong got what he deserved. Junsong frowns and asks what that's supposed to mean. Seong replies smugly, asking if Junsong can't tell from Lee Hoyong's level that all he did was try to benefit from Seong's strength while Seong carried the group. Yiziel finds his words absurd and asks what he's trying to say, realizing that it was Lee Hoyong's abilities that actually got them through the mission. Seong becomes uneasy hearing that and retorts that Lee Hoyong simply got lucky with his scheming and only delivered the final blow after Seong had weakened the enemy. Yiziel looks confused and asks if Seong is sure Lee Hoyong didn't save him from near death. Hearing that, Seong remembers how Lee Hoyong quickly defeated several kobolds, which makes him wonder if Lee Hoyong has a skill that allows him to disguise his level. Seong tries to convince himself that Lee Hoyong won't make it back alive. Junsong then shares his personal opinion, saying he hopes Lee Hoyong is truly as capable as Yiziel believes because, if that's the case, Lee Hoyong might at least have a small chance of returning. Yiziel suddenly recalls when Lee Hoyong told her that he would let everyone see the truth with their own eyes. Thinking about it brings tears to her eyes, but she quickly wipes them away, clenches her fists, and tells Junsong that she believes Lee Hoyong will return safely. Junsong smiles upon hearing that and agrees with her. Meanwhile, inside the portal, Lee Hoyong finds himself back in the kobold village from before. As he walks, he glances at his stats window and smiles. He recalls that he was even considering voting for himself if things hadn't worked out, but now he feels relieved that everything seems to be going in his favor. Lee Hoyong then thinks about Seong's behavior, deciding that they'll need to have a little chat later. It was already clear that Seong tried to take the final blow, and Lee Hoyong finds that too much. Suddenly, the system alerts him that the Kobold tribe's hunting group has returned. The kobolds, seeing their fallen tribesmen, grow furious. The system announces the start of the death mission and instructs Lee Hoyong to defeat the chieftain and the enraged hunting group. The boss of the mission roars, and the hunting group charges toward Lee Hoyong. He immediately realizes that this is a boss-level monster encounter in a death mission. The guide displays information confirming that the kobold chieftain is the dungeon's boss monster and that it's a level 12 enemy. Like other kobolds, the chieftain is weak to poison. Reading this, Lee Hoyong decides to use the poisonous fruit he obtained earlier, coating his sword with it. He knows that facing a level 12 boss on top of other kobolds would be nearly impossible for most people. However, Lee Hoyong is not like others. As the kobolds attack, he dodges swiftly and activates his level 2 basic swordsmanship skill, taking them down one by one. After eliminating all the low-level kobolds, he takes a deep breath. Only the dungeon boss remains. Determined to see how powerful a death mission boss really is, Lee Hoyong charges forward and attacks. The boss blocks the strike, surprising Lee Hoyong, who quickly adjusts to reduce the impact. He's impressed that a monster could possess such combat instincts and acknowledges that this boss truly deserves its title. Then, unexpectedly, the boss monster begins to retreat. Lee Hoyong chases after it, striking repeatedly and mocking it, wondering how it can call itself a boss monster. The creature's HP keeps dropping rapidly, and Lee Hoyong realizes that it'll be over soon. He even wonders if this is some sort of bonus stage, one that anyone who made it this far could easily clear. Well, It turns out to be good for Li Hoyong. He strikes the boss monster again, but is shocked to see that the creature's skin has suddenly hardened. Seeing this, Li Hoyong wonders what is happening all of a sudden. Li Hoyong follows its gaze and notices the crimson moon above. The boss monster's eyes turn red, and it immediately launches a counterattack against Li Hoyong. The scene shifts to Seong, who arrogantly declares that he will carry everyone for the rest of the floor since there's nothing they can do about someone who's already gone. Junsong and Yiziel ignore him, Junsong deep in thought, while Yiziel silently prays for Li Hoyong's safety. Seong lets out a scoff and asks Yiziel if she even understands what death means, claiming that it's obvious Li Hoyong is already gone. He questions why she's praying for him, sarcastically asking if she's praying for Li Hoyong to rest in peace. Hearing this, Yiziel starts crying and tells Seong to have some conscience, even in a world like this. Seong is startled by her reaction. Yiziel continues, asking what he would do if Li Hoyong were to return safely. Seong snaps back, mocking the idea that Li Hoyong could possibly come back alive. Everyone around them watches the argument unfold, until suddenly, the same portal from before reopens, stunning everyone. Li Hoyong steps out of it, leaving Junsong and Juno in shock. Juno looks genuinely pleased to see him. As Li Hoyong walks out, his wounds begin to heal back to normal. The system announces that the player who participated in the death mission has returned alive. Li Hoyong calmly states that he's back, and now, let's see how he managed to survive. The guide warns him to be cautious, explaining that the Kobold Chieftain's abilities increase when its eyes turn red. At that moment, the boss monster's eyes glow red again, and it attacks Li Hoyong. The impact sends Li Hoyong crashing into a nearby tree. He sits down, clutching his wound. The boss monster's health has dropped to 27%, but it's charging toward him again. Li Hoyong knows he needs just one decisive hit, yet no plan comes to mind. As the monster's attack nears, he reacts instinctively and dodges. The blow slams into the tree, leaving a massive hole. Seeing this, Li Hoyong is astonished. Then, an idea strikes him. He recalls that while a sword may not break through a wall, a nail can break it. He realizes he may have subconsciously thought of a sword only. With that thought, he decides to try something new. The boss monster charges toward him again. This time, Li Hoyong plans to use the monster's own momentum against it, adding his full body weight to the counter. The creature leaps into the air to strike, and Li Hoyong focuses all his power into a single point, driving his sword through the monster's shoulder. He's thrilled to see that it worked, and confirms that he has cleared the death mission. Back in the safe room, Yiziel sees Li Hoyong and immediately runs toward him, crying tears of joy as she says she knew he would return. But before she can reach him, she's suddenly blocked and tumbles to the ground, because Seong, terrified yet overjoyed, rushes to hug Li Hoyong first, saying he always had faith that Li Hoyong would make it back, and even calls him Big Brother. Seong nervously laughs, saying there's no way a simple death mission could stop his big brother, Li Hoyong, who he calls the strongest in the universe. Li Hoyong becomes extremely angry with Seong and clenches his fist, wishing he could just teach him a lesson for his nonsense. Another player suddenly approaches Li Hoyong with his party. Li Byonkial asks if he truly cleared the death mission. Both Li Hoyong and Seong look at Byonkial, who continues by saying he's really glad that Li Hoyong is safe, but if he did clear the mission, then he must have gained a large amount of experience. So, why hasn't his level changed? Hearing that, everyone around starts murmuring, wondering about it. Some assume it might be like the time with the rabbit mod and think it's nothing significant. Li Hoyong stays silent, thinking to himself that he thought he'd grown used to this kind of treatment, but the world always seems to want the weak to stay weak. He recalls the past, back in elementary school, when he topped the midterm exams. Instead of congratulating him, other students spread rumors that he had cheated. Back then, all Li Hoyong could do was tremble in fear as others laughed, claiming that there was no way a poor orphan could score the highest marks without even attending an academy. Now, the situation feels exactly the same. People use their narrow-minded reasoning to claim that Li Hoyong must have hidden somewhere and waited until the right time to appear, just like during the tutorial. Lies like these always seem believable to people who want to bring others down. They start belittling Li Hoyong, questioning what he could possibly do, saying he must have been hiding in a hole somewhere. It's as if they can't stand the idea of someone they once looked down on rising above them, so they try to crush him again. But Li Hoyong already understands that prejudiced people rarely change their views so easily. Still, he knows what he needs to do now. Before he can say anything, Yiziel steps forward and shouts at the crowd, telling them not to speak so carelessly. She demands to know why they keep doubting him when he already proved his strength by surviving the death mission. Yiziel takes Li Hoyong's side and stands beside him, while Li Hoyong quietly looks at her. Suddenly, Seong also steps up, shouting that Big Sister Yiziel is absolutely right. He yells that not only did they fail to hold a party to celebrate the glorious return of Li Hoyong, the strongest in the universe, but they even dared to ruin the mood. Seong then flexes proudly and asks if everyone has lost their minds. Hearing that, Li Hoyong can't help but think Seong sounds even more ridiculous than before, but still, he smiles slightly, because despite everything, he feels a bit reassured. Even so, Li Hoyong knows that he needs everyone to survive in the tower. But to make that possible, he must show them something convincing. Gathering everyone's attention, he announces that he wants to show them something. Then, Li Hoyong draws the boss monster's sword, named the Indomitable Sword, a rare-ranked weapon that grants a 15% boost in attack power. Everyone is astonished to see such a rare weapon, realizing that its power is practically a game-changer. John tries to examine her own weapon for comparison, but no information appears for the old long sword she holds. Seeing this, Junsong joins the conversation, commenting that he's surprised Li Hoyong kept the poisonous fruit from before and praises him, just as Yiziel said, for being truly extraordinary. Yiziel beams with pride upon hearing that, while Li Hoyong modestly replies that he was just lucky. Junsong continues, explaining that such a valuable reward item is far more useful for survival than any amount of experience points. But the mention of survival makes Li Hoyong's tone change. He reminds everyone that they seem to have forgotten how they nearly drove him to his death. The atmosphere turns tense as everyone looks uneasy. Juno, unable to stay silent any longer, steps forward and tells Li Hoyong that he's right. Juno admits that while he justified it to himself at the time, thinking it couldn't be helped, in truth, it was nothing but selfishness. He thought it was fine as long as he wasn't the one who had to die. Even though everyone knew that voting for Li Hoyong, the lowest-level player, was the same as targeting him, they still cast him into danger to save themselves. After saying that, Juno bows deeply and apologizes to Li Hoyong, tears falling as he says how truly glad he is that Li Hoyong came back alive. Li Hoyong silently watches as Juno apologizes, when suddenly Eunjin sighs and asks why Juno has to go that far. She argues that someone had to enter the portal anyway, and since Li Hoyong even returned with a rare item, everything turned out fine. Juno doesn't like her comment and glares at her angrily, shouting and asking if she doesn't feel even a shred of guilt. Smirking, Eunjin fires back, telling Juno that he's not in any position to say that when he was the first one to vote for Li Hoyong. Juno can't find any words to respond, but before the argument can continue, Li Hoyong steps in and tells everyone that the reason he brought this up wasn't to reprimand anyone. It was to make sure something like this never happens again. Li Hoyong explains that they must have realized it too during the death mission. The tower is trying to divide them. It provokes distrust among people, stirs conflict. That's why Li Hoyong believes that his return from the death mission is an opportunity, proof that their actions can defy the tower's intentions. Hearing that, Junsong asks Li Hoyong if he has a plan for the future. Li Hoyong replies that he intends to find a way for as many people as possible to survive and continue climbing the tower. They will keep moving higher and higher, and when they finally reach the top one day, they'll be able to reclaim their lives. Hearing his firm resolve fills everyone's hearts with a new light of hope, the hope of someday returning to their normal lives. Yiziel agrees and says that to achieve that, everyone must join hands. Li Hoyong nods in agreement, saying unity is the only way forward. Watching all this, Juno feels a warm sensation in his heart, realizing how generous and selfless Li Hoyong truly is. He regrets ever judging him over something as trivial as his level. Suddenly, Kum Kum appears in the tower again, announcing with a playful tone that it's quite unfortunate, because the new mission is a survival game. Everyone is startled to see Kum Kum return, wondering why he's back after leaving earlier. Some speculate that he might be there to give them points. Catching on to what Kum Kum said, Li Hoyong asks what he means by a survival mission. Kum Kum smiles, complimenting Li Hoyong for catching on quickly, and confirms that he's correct. The new mission for Level 2 will take place among the 15 players present. Everyone feels a chill run down their spine upon hearing that. Kum continues explaining with a grin. It will be a battle royale. However, since it's still a low-level stage, it'll just be a mild version, so they shouldn't worry too much. Then he begins outlining the rules of the battle royale. Rule 1. In the Level 2 mission, there will be 16 players and 16 doppelgangers, making a total of 32 participants. Rule 2. The condition to clear the stage is simple: eliminate all the doppelgangers. These doppelgangers will not only share the same stats, but also the same memories as the players, making them formidable opponents. Rule 3. The most important one: there will be no reward for killing a doppelganger, but if a player kills another player, they will gain stat points in gold. In other words, this mission presents an opportunity for players to grow stronger and earn gold, but it's clear that the tower is trying to push them into fighting each other. The players are visibly disturbed, realizing that Kum is essentially encouraging them to turn on one another. Then Kum snaps his fingers and adds one final rule. Every 30 minutes without a single kill, everyone will be immediately summoned to the lobby and face a massive disaster. As he snaps his fingers, a glowing portal appears, and a huge green hand begins to emerge from it. The sight terrifies everyone present, and they start running in panic, shouting for help. Watching the enormous creature step forth, Hoyong realizes that the tower intends to force them into combat with a monster whose rank is completely unknown. The monster suddenly slams the ground, creating a massive hole. Seeing this, all the strength drains from Hoyong's legs, causing him to collapse in terror. Hoyong quickly saves Juno and Yiziel from being struck by the monster's attack. Lying on the ground, Hoyong thinks to himself that this monster truly is a disaster. The black-haired man trembles in fear, unable to accept what's happening. They barely survive the first floor, and now the tower expects them to fight something like this. People begin crying and shouting for help, because, of course, no one wants to die. Hoyong realizes the situation is turning dire as panic spreads among everyone. The monster charges at a young boy and throws a punch, but before it lands, Hoyong rushes in and rescues him. The boy thanks Hoyong, while Hoyong wonders what the monster is doing attacking them even though the second-floor mission hasn't officially begun yet. Then he notices Kum, who is also pretending to be scared like everyone else. That makes Hoyong suspect that the tower is putting on a show, trying to scare them into taking the next mission seriously. If that's true, then this might just be a warning, not a real fight. But before he can feel relieved, 3 people are suddenly sent flying by the impact of the monster's punch. Junsong fires arrows at the monster from a distance, while Seong throws a rock in desperation, but neither attack has any effect. The monster's massive hand remains completely unharmed, leaving both of them terrified. Junsong yells that nothing is working, no matter how many arrows he shoots. Hoyong grows furious as he realizes that this isn't just for show. He begins to wonder if the monster truly intends to kill them. Yiziel, who has been using her healing magic to help the injured, calls out to Hoyong and says she's completely out of mana. That makes him even more worried. No one has died yet, but if this keeps up, that could change at any moment. The monster attacks again. Seeing this, Hoyong turns around and orders everyone to fall back. Juno shouts at him to move away too, but Hoyong knows this isn't the time to care about what others think. If he can't stop it now, everyone will die. With the synergy between the indomitable sword and his striking technique, maybe he can take the creature down. Hoyong activates his level 2 basic swordsmanship and charges at the monster, just like he did during the boss fight in the death mission. He strikes with his sword toward the monster's incoming punch, hoping it will have some kind of effect. Suddenly, the monster disappears, shocking everyone, including Hoyong himself. The crowd erupts in cheers, rooting for him, while Hoyong stares at his sword in disbelief, wondering if it's really that powerful. It feels unlike anything he's ever experienced before. A pop-up window appears in front of him, informing him that he will be in an exhausted state for 3 minutes due to pushing beyond his physical limits. After reading it, Hoyong's vision fades, and he collapses to the ground, thinking he's done for. 3 minutes later, he wakes up. Another pop-up appears, notifying him that his exhausted state has been lifted. Drenched in sweat, Hoyong slowly sits up. Yiziel, deeply worried, rushes over and calls out his name. Junsong asks if he's awake now. Juno, feeling deeply inspired by what he witnessed, tells Lee Hoyong that he's truly touched. He can't believe how humble Lee Hoyong remains despite being so strong. Juno becomes so emotional that he starts crying, saying even the way Lee Hoyong fainted at the end looked heroic. Lee Hoyong slowly stands up, placing a hand on his head and asking what's going on and what happened to the huge disaster. Hearing that, Juno looks away, and Kum Kum happily reveals that the disaster has been sent back. He explains that this time was only meant to give them a taste of what's to come. Lee Hoyong feels reassured, realizing his suspicion was correct. Kum Kum continues with a grin, saying it seems things weren't all that exciting since everyone is still being too friendly with each other, even after nearly facing death. The fact that a kill must occur every 30 minutes means that even people standing right next to each other could become victims. This realization throws everyone into panic. After relaying the message, Kum Kum opens a blue portal and says that since he has passed on the information, he will now take his leave. The portal closes behind him, leaving everyone silently staring in shock. Lee Hoyong feels furious. It's so blatant what the tower intends to do. He wonders if there's really nothing they can do to change this outcome. Some time passes, and the group, especially the women, begin to panic, saying that if they can't find the doppelgangers, they'll be forced to fight each other. Jichiel shouts that they need to find a solution quickly. Someone suggests marking everyone so they can tell who's real, but another person reminds them that Kum Kum said the doppelgangers share their memories as well, so the marks would be useless. As tension rises and no one can come up with an answer, Lee Hoyong steps forward and says he has an idea. Yiziel asks what it is, and Lee Hoyong stands up, declaring that during this mission, he alone will do the fighting. His words shock everyone. He continues, explaining that everyone else should stay still and gather at the highest point on the second floor. If anyone other than him attempts to attack or kill, that person can be considered a doppelganger, and they should all unite to defeat it. One of the players, on Secheng, whose class is Soldier and who is level 9, asks if that's really Lee Hoyong's plan. Secheng, a former Special Forces member skilled in survival, listens carefully. Unjin, however, argues against the idea, saying that while they know Lee Hoyong is talented despite being a lower level, there's no reason they should follow his orders so blindly. Hearing that, Lee Hoyong calmly asks if everyone remembers what Kum Kum said. Kum Kum made it clear that there will be no reward for killing a doppelganger, but if a player kills another player, they will gain stat points and gold. That means the very people standing beside them might be tempted to attack. Lee Hoyong explains that while the mission's instructions say to eliminate doppelgangers, what the tower truly wants is for them to turn on each other. But he refuses to play by the tower's rules anymore, and he believes his plan is the best way to prevent that. Unjin still objects, asking how this could possibly be the best solution. Suddenly, Junsong intervenes, raising his hand and saying that he agrees with Lee Hoyong. He adds that this plan could definitely minimize the damage and casualties they suffer, but then he asks Lee Hoyong if he has a method to tell who the real doppelgangers are. Lee Hoyong smiles confidently, thinking to himself that, of course, he has a way to do it. The second floor mission begins, and the system announces the condition. Each player must make at least one kill within 30 minutes. There are currently 16 players and 16 doppelgangers. The scene shifts to Seong, who is walking arrogantly through the forest, muttering that he can't believe Lee Hoyong asked everyone to just gather at the top and do nothing. Although Lee Hoyong was the one who suggested it, Seong still finds it reckless, and he absolutely hates climbing mountains. Suddenly, Seong hears footsteps nearby and quickly hides behind a tree, activating his skill. It turns out to be Lee Hoyong, who calls out, saying that Seong is too big to be hiding behind a tree. Hearing that familiar voice, Seong sighs in relief and happily steps out, glad that it's just his big brother, Lee Hoyong. He begins to say that he was worried it might be a doppelganger. But before Seong can finish his sentence, Lee Hoyong swiftly strikes him down with a single blow. The mission begins, and Lee Hoyong stands in the forest, nervously looking at his stats window while reading the guide. The guide displays a message stating that the first player to reach a certain stat level and sensitivity will receive the skill Impeccable Senses as a reward for being the first to achieve that milestone. This skill can also help identify doppelgangers. Lee Hoyong thinks to himself, this is it. He actually feels a little anxious after confidently claiming that he could distinguish between real players and doppelgangers. But this skill appears at the perfect time. Reading the description carefully, Li Hoyong starts using his gold to increase his stats, sweating as he wonders how many points he needs to allocate. The system notifies him that he is the first player to reach a stat level of 50 in sensitivity, and as a reward, he has obtained impeccable senses. Smiling, Li Hoyong opens his skill panel and reads that his 5 senses are now extremely heightened, allowing him to obtain detailed information about anyone within a certain radius. He finally got the skill after spending about half of his total gold. It feels as if his entire world has gained a new layer of perception, a sharper, more refined filter over reality. Li Hoyong feels amazed, but then he hears someone mumbling to themselves. Recognizing the voice, he focuses using his newly developed sixth sense to locate the source. He discovers it's Hoyong, complaining about being left behind at the top of the mountain with nothing to do. Li Hoyong smiles, pleased that he can hear Hoyong's voice so clearly even from 500 meters away. It seems Hoyong has a lot to grumble about. As Hoyong keeps walking, Li Hoyong suddenly smells an unbearable stench so strong that he covers his nose in disgust. It's then that he realizes, this isn't the real Hoyong. It's a doppelganger. Acting quickly, Li Hoyong follows it and eliminates the fake, prompting the system to announce to all players that a doppelganger has been defeated. Afterward, Li Hoyong remembers how convincingly the doppelganger behaved right up until its final moment, and he can't help but feel uneasy about having to kill it. Still, he looks up toward the top of the mountain, thinking that now that he has confirmed his ability to identify doppelgangers, he hopes the others are following his instructions. Thanks to Junsong's earlier help, everyone had agreed to the plan, but in real-time situations, anything could happen. Li Hoyong can only hope nothing goes wrong before they reach the higher ground on this map. Suddenly, the system announces that a player has died. Li Hoyong freezes, shocked, wondering what could have caused it. There are many possibilities. It could be a doppelganger attack, a player killing another player, or perhaps Hoyong causing some kind of trouble. He keeps thinking about it, but knows there's no way to confirm what happened from here. So he starts running, determined to find the killer as quickly as possible. After locating the largest tree in the forest, Li Hoyong climbs up and surveys the area. He recalls that another player had been killed right after he defeated a doppelganger earlier. From his vantage point, he scans the forest, but then his sixth sense detects movement. Someone is killing another person. Li Hoyong's eyes widen in shock. Having found the killer, he immediately rushes toward the scene. The attacker turns out to be the doppelganger of Yongwu, who is level 5. Without hesitation, Li Hoyong defeats the doppelganger. Exhaling deeply, he reflects that he initially thought his own doppelganger might have been the culprit, but this situation was different from what he expected. Still, he's relieved that he stopped it before it could harm anyone else. Afterward, Li Hoyong prays for the fallen player, Li Bianqiao, hoping his soul rests in peace. But then, something about the scene feels off. Go Yongwu's weapon is a dull longsword, yet the wound on the victim doesn't match a sword strike. Li Hoyong realizes what kind of wound it must be, and just then, another doppelganger appears, preparing to attack him with a bow. The system issues another alert, announcing a new culprit. However, when Li Hoyong activates his sixth sense, he realizes something shocking. The supposed doppelganger is actually a real player, who then calls out, asking what's hiding behind the tree. Li Hoyong decides to reveal himself and looks at Junsong, who appears to have gotten hit by an arrow in his shoulder. Seeing that, Li Hoyong wonders if the arrow was fired by Junsong's own doppelganger. Li Hoyong starts walking toward him, asking if he's all right, but Junsong, looking seriously injured, tells him to stop where he is. He says that although he doesn't want to doubt Li Hoyong, he has no way of knowing who is a doppelganger, so Li Hoyong should keep a safe distance. Hearing that, Li Hoyong points his sword at the fallen doppelganger nearby and says that the one he just defeated was a doppelganger, which should be enough proof for Junsong to know who he truly is. Junsong exhales in relief, realizing that Li Hoyong is indeed human and not a doppelganger. He warns Li Hoyong to be careful of his own doppelganger before collapsing unconscious. Li Hoyong quickly rushes over, catching Junsong before he falls completely, and starts helping him walk. While moving through the forest, Junsong suddenly apologizes, saying that if he hadn't let his doppelganger escape earlier, the others wouldn't have died. He feels guilty for causing everyone trouble. Trembling, Junsong admits that the thought of another version of himself roaming around and hurting people is horrifying. Li Hoyong reassures him that it isn't his fault, reminding him that they are all victims of the tower's cruel system, and tells him to focus only on surviving and escaping. Suddenly, Juno and Yiziel appear. Yiziel runs up and tells Li Hoyong that she was worried after hearing that some players had been killed. Juno adds that he was worried too and can't believe that 2 players have already died. Yiziel then turns to Junsong and asks if he's injured, insisting on healing him. But before she can do so, Li Hoyong steps forward, warning Junsong to step back, because they are actually doppelgangers. Junsong looks shocked and asks if he's serious. It turns out that both of them, the fake Yiziel and Juno, suddenly charge forward to attack Li Hoyong. During the clash, Juno's doppelganger sneers and asks if Li Hoyong still holds a grudge over what happened during the death mission, saying that he thought Li Hoyong was a big-hearted person. Acting quickly, Junsong decides to take on the other doppelganger and draws his bow as Yiziel's doppelganger rushes toward him. In that moment, Li Hoyong realizes something strange. The doppelgangers are coming after him too confidently. Especially if one of them has Yiziel's memories, she would know just how powerful he is. Instead of attacking Junsong, Yiziel's doppelganger suddenly lunges at Li Hoyong with a sword, but he senses the movement beforehand and dodges. It becomes clear that both doppelgangers are focusing only on attacking Li Hoyong. He evades their strikes, but lands on the ground, just as an arrow comes flying toward him. Even with his highly developed sixth sense, Li Hoyong barely manages to dodge it, the arrow grazing his face and leaving a small scratch. Shocked, he turns to look at Junsong, only to see that Junsong's expression has completely changed from before. Junsong smirks and says with a cold grin that he thought he had already achieved checkmate. The other doppelgangers are actually siding with Junsong for some reason. The scene then shifts to Li Hoyong, who is fighting against a doppelganger, while Junsong hides behind a tree, aiming his bow toward Li Hoyong with a smirk on his face. Junsong is 35 years old, his class is archer, and his previous job was as a fisherman in Hoyong. The scene shifts again, showing Junsong and another doppelganger standing in front of Li Hoyong. Junsong laughs, saying he accidentally spoke in his hometown dialect without realizing it. Guess he just got a little too excited. Smirking, Junsong tells Li Hoyong that he has a question for him and asks what kind of emotions he's feeling right now. With a mocking grin, Junsong loudly asks if it's betrayal, futility, or anger. Li Hoyong exhales and smiles, saying that he was actually wondering when Junsong would reveal his true nature. But it turns out Junsong is even more unhinged than he thought. Junsong looks confused, asking why Li Hoyong is speaking as if he already knew this betrayal would happen. Hearing that, Li Hoyong reveals that he can see other people's status windows, and when he checked Junsong's stats, he noticed they had increased significantly. Junsong's expression shifts, and he laughs, saying that Li Hoyong becomes more and more interesting as time goes by. He then asks if Li Hoyong has received the tower's favor, claiming that he would be quite jealous if that were true. Cutting to the point, Li Hoyong tells him to stop the small talk and demands to know why he's doing this. He asks if Junsong really wants gold and stats so badly that he'd go as far as killing others. Hearing that, Junsong replies that he doesn't need a reason. He continues, saying that in this twisted world, when he kills people, not only is there no punishment, but he actually gets rewarded. Laughing maniacally, Junsong fires an arrow toward Li Hoyong. Li Hoyong had initially thought that maybe Junsong had been forced into this situation, but he was wrong. Dodging the arrow, Li Hoyong charges at him, realizing that Junsong had simply been wearing a mask all along, hiding his true nature for the right moment. In Li Hoyong's eyes, Junsong is nothing more than a dangerous psychopath. The two doppelgangers rush forward to attack Li Hoyong, while Junsong continues to attack from behind. Juno's doppelganger lunges first, but Li Hoyong leaps into the air, dodges, lands swiftly, and kicks Juno's doppelganger away. At that very moment, Junsong fires another arrow, but Li Hoyong breaks it with his sword, thinking Junsong is using the same trick again. However, another arrow follows immediately behind it. Li Hoyong reacts a split second too late, but still manages to dodge, the arrow grazing past and slamming into a tree, leaving a large hole. Now, another scratch appears on the other side of Li Hoyong's face. Seeing the power of that attack, Li Hoyong realizes that Junsong still hasn't revealed all his tricks. Juno's doppelganger reappears behind Li Hoyong while Yiziel's doppelganger heals it. Together, they form a terrifying combination, a skilled close combat fighter, a healer, and a ranged attacker stronger than both. It's a setup with almost no weaknesses. Lee Hoyong looks at Junsong and says he doesn't know how he managed to convince the doppelgangers, but it seems Junsong came well prepared. Junsong smiles smugly, replying that if he wants to catch a big fish, he needs a big net. This much preparation is only natural. He admits that he thought Lee Hoyong would go down much more easily, but he's surprisingly tough. Junsong then grabs an arrow, commenting that it's actually better this way. Junsong charges his bow with power, causing 2 more arrows to appear beside the first one, and orders the doppelgangers that it's time to raise their nets. He releases the arrows toward Lee Hoyong, who stands calmly, activating his impeccable senses. As the projectiles approach, Lee Hoyong assesses the situation. Yiziel's doppelganger is level 7 with solid stats, and Juno's doppelganger is level 8 with well-balanced attributes. Lee Hoyong counters the incoming arrows, striking them mid-air, then strikes back, killing Juno's doppelganger in one decisive blow. Against overwhelming strength, even the best team composition means nothing. After that, he swiftly eliminates Yiziel's doppelganger as well. With both defeated, Lee Hoyong begins walking toward Junsong, who stares in disbelief. Overcome with fear, Junsong falls to the ground, crying and begging for his life. He confesses that he became obsessed with the rewards and lost control, that seeing how strong Lee Hoyong was made him impatient, and he crossed a line he never should have. Then, suddenly, Junsong tries to launch a surprise attack, but Lee Hoyong blocks it effortlessly and strikes back, defeating him. After killing Junsong, Lee Hoyong stands silent. He had no choice but to take the life of another human. Suddenly, a pop-up window appears, shocking him. It states that the player who accepted the challenge to become the Star Killer has died, and now Lee Hoyong has gained the opportunity to take that position in the fallen player's place. Out of nowhere, a red mist begins to form around Lee Hoyong, startling him. Another pop-up window appears, explaining that if he accepts the challenge to become the Star Killer, he will receive a significant boost to his stats and also gain the support of the doppelgangers. If he becomes the Star Killer in the end, he will receive tremendous rewards. The mist gathers into a single point and starts to take shape, forming the figure of an elf-like woman made entirely of red energy. She stretches out her hand, inviting Lee Hoyong to come closer. A new pop-up window appears, asking for confirmation if he wishes to accept the challenge. Seeing this, Lee Hoyong realizes that this must be the same reason Junsong was able to command the doppelgangers. Another pop-up window immediately follows, listing the benefits Lee Hoyong will receive if he becomes the Star Killer. The first benefit is a legendary rank weapon. The second is a legendary level skill. The third is a rapid increase in stat points. And the last is an exclusive Star Killer trait. Reading through those benefits, Lee Hoyong can't help but wonder why the rewards are so excessively good. He gulps, thinking that although he doesn't like the idea of killing humans, he had been able to fight doppelgangers because he knew they weren't real people. But from now on, he might face situations where he'll have to fight other humans, some of whom could also be challengers for the title of Star Killer. No, it might even be someone destined to become the future Star Killer themselves. After thinking it over, Lee Hoyong decides to decline the offer. Remembering Junsong and that devilish figure in the mist, he resolves not to become a madman like him. Afterward, Lee Hoyong starts walking toward the top of the mountain, where he spots Hoyong, Yiziel, and Juno waving at him. He feels a wave of relief and happiness upon seeing them, but the mood quickly changes when Hoyong acts out, asking why Lee Hoyong is so late. Lee Hoyong almost loses his composure at their attitude and nearly draws his sword, thinking that he might actually go insane. Controlling himself, he takes a deep breath and instead compliments them for gathering in one place. Lee Hoyong knew it would have been difficult for everyone to follow his instructions, so he thanks them for doing so. However, he soon notices that all the players' doppelgangers are also there, mixed among the real ones. They ask what they should do next, and whether Lee Hoyong can truly distinguish who is real and who is a doppelganger. Lee Hoyong confirms that he can, but before he can continue speaking, another voice interrupts, thanking everyone for following his instructions. It turns out to be another version of Lee Hoyong, his doppelganger. Lee Hoyong glares at it, realizing that his double has finally appeared. The players are thrown into chaos at the sight of two Lee Hoyongs standing before them. Confusion spreads as they argue about which one to trust. A blonde-haired girl asks if Lee Hoyong had foreseen this situation as well. The real Lee Hoyong, identifiable by the scars on his face, realizes that things have become far more complicated. This was exactly why he wanted to eliminate his own doppelganger before reaching this point, but his plan had been ruined because of an unexpected variable, Junsong. Now, it's like a game of chess. Whoever has the stronger hand will win and be accepted as the real Li Hoyong. Jiqiu shouts Li Hoyong's name, saying that he doesn't know who the real one is but begs him to explain the situation. He asks if Li Hoyong truly killed the doppelgangers as he claimed before, and then demands that he reveal their identities. There are a total of 8 individuals who either have a dead doppelganger or whose real selves have died. If Li Hoyong can identify the 5 doppelgangers he killed, they'll be able to confirm the truth. Among the 8, Junsong, Hoyong, and Byungcheol were doppelgangers. This means that if Li Hoyong can prove these facts, he'll be able to establish that he's the real one. But as Li Hoyong starts to speak, his doppelganger says the exact same thing at the same time. Both of them list the correct names and reveal that Yiziel and Juno were also among the dead doppelgangers. Everyone present is stunned by what they hear, and Li Hoyong grows increasingly worried, because now, the situation has truly come down to this. Li Hoyong's doppelganger begins to speak, catching Li Hoyong completely off guard. The doppelganger draws everyone's attention, saying that Seong and Yiziel were in his party on the first floor and that they had built a strong bond of trust. He claims that among all the doppelgangers, he found theirs first and killed them, then asks everyone what the odds of that happening could be. The real Li Hoyong is stunned, realizing that the doppelganger made the first move. Jiqiu questions whether this could be a trick designed to put Li Hoyong in an advantageous position. Even Eunjin says it seems far too convenient, but Yiziel adds that there's still no guarantee it isn't true. While they continue debating, the doppelganger keeps talking, saying that if what the fake said is correct, then Junsong over there must be the doppelganger, which means Li Hoyong killed the real Junsong himself. The doppelganger starts manipulating the group's emotions, reminding them of how strong and dependable Junsong was, their highest-level player and a real leader who gave them courage during tough times. Then the doppelganger points at the real Li Hoyong, saying that even if he truly is the real one, can they really trust a man who admits to killing someone? Eunjin becomes furious upon hearing that Junsong is dead and yells that there's no way that could be true. The rest of the players fall into confusion, unsure of what to believe or how to move forward. The doppelganger smirks to himself, thinking that although he doesn't know how the real Junsong actually died, the momentum is now clearly on his side. The only thing left is to seal his victory. The doppelganger points at Li Hoyong again and says it looks like he confessed too quickly, losing his composure in his eagerness to sway everyone to his side. Hearing those words, the players draw their weapons, deciding to attack Li Hoyong and eliminate the remaining doppelgangers afterward. Seong shouts at them not to be ridiculous, warning that attacking him would mean they're siding with a fake. Yiziel also pleads with them not to jump to conclusions after hearing only one side of the story. Juno agrees with Yiziel, telling everyone to proceed with caution, but no one listens. Time is running out, and in just a few minutes, the massive disaster event will begin. Listening to their murmurs, Li Hoyong feels a mix of disbelief and frustration. The players are praising the doppelganger, essentially praising him, but still, he recognizes that his doppelganger made the perfect strategic move for the situation. Then Li Hoyong steps forward and calmly admits that the doppelganger is right. He confesses that he did, in fact, kill Junsong. The doppelganger looks confused and asks if Li Hoyong has already given up, saying he's disappointed by how easily he surrendered. Ignoring him, Li Hoyong keeps walking forward, because there's something even his doppelganger doesn't know. Drawing his sword, Li Hoyong explains that Junsong wasn't innocent, he had killed other players. With determination in his eyes, Li Hoyong attacks the doppelganger, declaring that Junsong was a traitor. After taking the hit, Junsong starts breathing heavily, which makes Eunjin extremely worried about him. Li Hoyong's doppelganger also draws his sword and shouts, asking if Hoyong is just doing whatever he wants now that he has nothing left to say. Juno pauses to think, and then asks what Li Hoyong meant by calling Junsong a traitor. He quickly realizes that if his assumption is correct, then the one who just struck Junsong must be the real Li Hoyong. The truth is that since Li Hoyong gathered everyone in one place, he already created a situation where the players hold the advantage, because whenever a doppelganger kills someone, its identity is revealed immediately. This means they can't kill recklessly. However, if Li Hoyong can identify who is a doppelganger, he could simply prove himself by killing one. But instead of doing that, he's claiming that Junsong is a traitor. So, Juno asks if Junsong really killed humans. The real Li Hoyong confirms it, revealing that Junsong was a demon who wore the mask of a good person, hiding his true nature and waiting for the right moment. Eunjin is furious and refuses to believe it. Thinking about how much Junsong cared for her, she becomes overwhelmed with anger and immediately charges at Li Hoyong. But the moment she turns her back, Junsong's doppelganger fires an arrow at her, striking her down. Eunjin gasps in shock and collapses to the ground. Right after that, the system announces that a player has died, shocking everyone, including the real Li Hoyong, who never expected Junsong's doppelganger to still have enough strength left to attack. Junsong's doppelganger starts laughing, saying that this is exactly the expression he wanted to see. Suddenly, Secheng emerges from the bushes where he was hiding and swiftly kills Junsong's doppelganger. After that, Secheng apologizes to the real Li Hoyong for doubting him and asks what they should do next. The rest of the players are stunned, realizing that Junsong truly was a doppelganger. Once they identify the real Li Hoyong, everyone feels motivated and begins asking him for instructions on what to do next. Hearing that, Li Hoyong feels a strange sense of déjà vu, just like during the death mission, and decides to share his final plan. Li Hoyong's doppelganger, knowing his identity has been exposed, launches an attack. Li Hoyong blocks it and begins fighting while instructing everyone to use all the gold they have to raise their stats. The other players follow his lead, boosting their stats as they fight. Now, the doppelgangers are no match for them, because everyone there has already grown stronger than they were yesterday. Since the doppelgangers' stats were identical to what the players had when they first entered the second floor, they're easily overpowered. Thanks to Li Hoyong's quick thinking and strategy, the group clears the mission without any further casualties. After returning to the lobby, everyone takes a moment to rest. Li Hoyong sits quietly, reflecting on what happened. Secheng, looking dejected, says that if it weren't for Junsong, they could have cleared the mission without anyone dying. Hearing that, Li Hoyong thinks that Secheng is probably the most disappointed, since he was in Junsong's party. But Li Hoyong feels the same. His goal was to clear the second floor without losing anyone. He also realizes that the situation in other regions is likely worse than theirs. Those players don't have someone like him who can read the guide, and among them, someone else might have chosen the path of the Star Killer. This makes Li Hoyong understand that the battles ahead will be even more intense. Though he's still weak, he's sure there's a reason he was given the special ability to read the guide. Li Hoyong knows that not everything he's experienced so far has been good, but as long as there are people who trust him, he'll do his best to save as many lives as possible. Suddenly, Secheng approaches Li Hoyong and thanks him, saying he survived only because of Li Hoyong's leadership. Li Hoyong humbly replies that it's thanks to everyone for following the plan. As more players gather around, Secheng comments that despite contributing the most, Li Hoyong is still only level 2. He speculates that Li Hoyong might have been given a special ability in exchange for his slower leveling speed. This observation startles Li Hoyong. He realizes that Secheng's cautiousness and decision-making abilities are remarkable, and that he'll likely become a great asset in the future. Then Secheng suddenly bows and sincerely apologizes for ever doubting or underestimating him. Seeing this, the other players also start apologizing one after another, which embarrasses Li Hoyong. He tells everyone there's no need to apologize. Seong bursts into laughter, saying the others are terrible at recognizing true potential, and proudly declares that he was the first to get on the Li Hoyong express train. Hearing that, Yiziel immediately interrupts, saying she was the first one to notice how extraordinary Li Hoyong truly is. Juno, tearing up, starts crying again and apologizes sincerely this time. Secheng then straightens up and says that he knows this might sound shameless after everything that's happened, but he wants Li Hoyong to lead them from now on. Li Hoyong is surprised by the suggestion, but then he smiles and agrees to take on the responsibility. Now, let's go back to 5 minutes before the mission was cleared. Even after defeating nearly all the doppelgangers, there was still one left. As everyone searched for the final one, Li Hoyong, who already knew its location, quietly walked toward the nearby bushes and killed the last remaining doppelganger of Secheng. And with that, they finally completed the mission. After surviving the brutal phase, the group finally returns to the safe zone, where the system calculates their rewards and distributes gold based on each player's contribution. A notification appears on their system panels, and Hoyong becomes extremely excited after seeing that he has received 2,000 gold, an amount he has never earned before. Overjoyed, he proudly brags about it to everyone around him, which makes Hoyong feel rather awkward. Despite the situation, everyone present receives some gold since they all followed Hoyong's strategy. As for Hoyong himself, he receives an impressive 12,500 gold. While checking his system panel, Hoyong notices a message in his inbox informing him that his shop's rank has increased. This reveals new information to him. If he wants to purchase rare or higher-tier items in the future, he will need to continue increasing his shop's rank. Without wasting time, Hoyong spends 5,000 gold to upgrade his basic swordsmanship skill to level 3. Previously, he had unknowingly used a higher level of swordsmanship during battle, but lost consciousness immediately afterward. Considering that he can now properly use such techniques for only 5,000 gold, Hoyong concludes that it is a surprisingly worthwhile investment. After finishing his purchases, Hoyong decides to give 1,500 gold to Yiziel. The gesture surprises her, but Hoyong explains that she deserves the reward for all the hard work she put in during the phase. Without her support, their victory would have been much more difficult. In a world where survival often requires taking the lives of others, the reason their group can still laugh together, rely on one another, and even help others is largely thanks to Yiziel's presence. Hearing this heartfelt praise warms Yiziel's heart, and she proudly promises that she will continue to grow stronger. Although Hoyong is reluctant, he also gives 200 gold to Hoyong. He believes Hoyong might still be useful to the group in the future, and it is generally better not to have troublesome people become enemies. Soon after, the mission for the third floor begins. This stage is a large-scale siege battle, and for the first time, they will encounter players from other regions. To clear the floor, their group must attack the enemy castle, bring it down, and occupy the altar inside. They are given only 24 hours to complete the objective, and the penalty for failure remains unknown. In addition, the system provides them with a special item called a return crystal, a time-limited item that can only be used on the third floor. As the group reads the mission description, several members conclude that defeating other players may be necessary to win. However, Hoyong quickly notices something unusual. To test his theory, he suddenly attacks Hoyong with his sword. The scene then shifts to Hoyong, who is traveling across a mountain to reach a distant tower. While moving forward, he reveals that he is still alive thanks to the return crystal, which returns players to the starting location when they are defeated. Hoyong finally arrives at the tower entrance, carrying out a reconnaissance mission assigned by Hoyong. In exchange for gathering information about the tower, Hoyong will receive 100 gold. Without hesitation, Hoyong begins punching the castle gate. With every punch, the gate's durability rapidly drops. After only 5 powerful strikes, the gate shatters completely. Smirking with confidence, Hoyong walks inside, while proudly boasting about his strength. However, just 2 seconds later, the destroyed gate instantly resets and returns to perfect condition. Now inside the castle, Hoyong carefully observes the situation. 2 guards stand on top of the castle wall, while around 10 people gather near the altar. Hoyong quickly orders Hoyong not to attack or defeat anyone, warning that doing so might reveal the true purpose of the return crystal to their enemies. Unfortunately, Hoyong dismisses the warning, believing the opposing players are too weak to pose a threat to him alone. Confident in his abilities, he prepares to eliminate them all. But the moment Hoyong shows hostility, someone strikes at him and he falls to the ground. As his vision fades, he notices a woman standing beside the altar, calmly holding a gun. After respawning at the starting location, Hoyong reports everything to Hoyong. The information shocks him because firearms should not be obtainable at this stage of the tower. The proof lies with Secheng, whose class is soldier, yet even he does not possess a gun. This leads Hoyong to suspect another possibility, that the mysterious woman might be a star killer. Realizing the upcoming battle will be far more difficult than expected, Hoyong begins to worry. At that moment, Yiziel gently grabs him and reassures him not to worry because she is standing by his side. Not only her, but every member of their group is ready to fight with him. Their support strengthens Hoyong's resolve and fills him with renewed courage. Gripping his sword firmly, he gathers everyone and prepares to explain his strategy. The group soon arrives near the castle, and Hoyong activates his impeccable senses to survey the area. Just as Seong had reported earlier, 2 level 8 guards are standing watch on the castle wall. Meanwhile, Seong confidently walks closer to the castle gate with his usual arrogance. Yiziel grows concerned that if Soyeon approaches the castle again, the enemy might figure out the secret of the return crystal. However, Hoyong dismisses the worry. He explains that even if the enemies notice something unusual, they would only suspect it rather than confirm it. In fact, there is a higher chance that they will simply assume the ability is something unique to Seong. Suddenly, the guards on the wall raise their weapons and aim directly at Soyeon. Reacting instantly, Hoyong moves quickly and saves him from the attack. Unlike before, the guards are now aggressive, but this also gives Hoyong's group the opportunity to fight back. Taking advantage of the moment, Hoyong uses Soyeon as a stepping point and leaps high into the air, landing on the castle wall where he swiftly defeats both guards. Juno realizes this is their perfect opportunity. Because of the failed attack during the first turn, the enemy will eventually discover how the return crystal works. That means they must finish the battle quickly before the enemy adapts. With Soyeon leading the charge, the entire group rushes toward the castle gate. However, while Soyeon is bragging about how easily he can break the gate apart, the mysterious woman suddenly strikes. The strike lands at both the gate and Soyeon at the same time. The attack is incredibly powerful. The gate's durability is completely destroyed with a single strike, preventing it from restoring itself. Yiziel immediately heals Soyeon after he is struck. Watching this unfold leaves Hoyong shocked by the weapon's destructive power. At that moment, one of the enemy guards smirks and warns that their half-hearted mindset will cost them their lives, especially with that dangerous woman ready to take advantage of any weakness. Hoyong had already considered the possibility, but now he is certain Seoyin is a star killer, and her level is 13. While Hoyong observes her from a distance and analyzes the situation, Seoyin suddenly turns toward him, raises her gun, and fires. The strike hits his shoulder, but fortunately, he avoids a fatal wound and quickly drinks a healing potion. Hoyong never expected the strike to travel such a long distance. Now he is fully convinced that she is extremely dangerous and does not hesitate to eliminate her opponents. Fortunately, Hoyong had already prepared Kalia's leather armor, which helps reduce the damage. Focusing on her again, Hoyong carefully analyzes Seoyin's stats and realizes something important. Each magic bullet consumes 10 magic points. If she is using a shop of the same rank as Hoyong, then she should not have access to mana recovery items yet. After calculating the situation, Hoyong concludes that she only has 13 bullets left. Without wasting another moment, he jumps down from the wall and signals the group to push forward. With Soyeon leading once again, the entire group charges toward the altar. As expected, Seoyin continues firing bullets at them. However, before initiating the assault, Hoyong had already thought through every detail of their strategy. Since the bullets are called magic bullets, he predicted that Seoyin cannot fire them endlessly because each one consumes magic points. That is why Hoyong instructed everyone to endure at least one strike if necessary. Even when the bullets hit them, they refuse to fall. Thanks to Yiziel's healing magic, the injured members recover almost instantly and keep moving forward. Seoyin soon notices that the group is recovering too quickly, realizing that continuing to waste bullets is ineffective. Instead, she orders the people near the altar to attack and stop them. At this point, the outcome of the battle will be decided. If the fight drags on, more teammates could be eliminated by the remaining magic bullets. Because of that, Hoyong knows they must reach the altar as quickly as possible. As the enemy group rushes forward, Hoyong skillfully dodges their attacks while knocking several of them down without lethal force. However, Seoyin notices his movements and fires another mana bullet directly at him. The strike comes from his blind spot, leaving Hoyong no time to dodge. Fortunately, his teammates react immediately. Juno swings his sword and deflects the bullet, saving Hoyong at the last moment. Seoyin is slightly surprised that Juno was able to react so quickly, but she immediately fires another strike, this time targeting Juno, and takes him down. Seeing his teammate getting defeated filled Hoyong with intense anger. As the battle continues, more players begin falling, and the chaos grows heavier. At that moment, Hoyong reaches an unsettling conclusion. Seoyin likely already knows that players will return even after being defeated. What angers him the most is the cold, emotionless expression on her face as she continues attacking people without hesitation. Seoyeon casually comments that Hoyong's group is quite interesting, but her remark only fuels his anger even further. Determined to end the fight, Hoyong activates level 3 basic swordsmanship, make his way through the enemy group as he charges directly toward the altar, ready to confront Seoyeon face to face. Seoyeon confidently declares to the enemy group that their defeat is inevitable because Hoyong has already reached the altar. With that advantage, Seoyeon says there is no longer any reason for them to hold back. He immediately begins fighting the remaining enemies with his full strength, while the final confrontation between Hoyong and Seoyeon begins to unfold. Seoyeon attempts to gather information about Hoyong, asking questions to learn more about him. However, Hoyong responds with a question of his own, pointing out that it is far stranger for her to have reached level 13 so early in the tower. In the middle of their exchange, the altar suddenly begins to glow and sends Hoyong a notification. It informs him that he has successfully occupied the tower, but 2 more members are required to fully conquer it. Before that can happen, however, Hoyong must first remove Seoyeon from the altar. The battle begins when Seoyeon fires a bullet toward him. Hoyong quickly dodges the attack and counters with a strike from his sword. Seoyeon is far from inexperienced, and she skillfully evades his strike. Their intense duel continues as she continues with multiple strikes while carefully observing him. She begins to wonder how Hoyong is reacting to her mana bullets so accurately. At one point, Hoyong's sword nearly lands a direct hit, but Seoyeon jumps back at the last second and immediately aims her gun again. She fires several more shots, yet Hoyong manages to avoid them all once again. Gradually, Seoyeon realizes something important. Hoyong is not simply dodging her bullets, he is predicting them. The reason behind this becomes clear through Juno's background. Among the strongest players in their region, Seo Juno is known for his exceptional reaction skills. In his past life, he was a professional table tennis player. In high-level matches, when long rallies occur, it is extremely difficult to return every shot using only visual reaction. Skilled players often study their opponent's posture, body movement, and line of sight to predict where the ball will go next. Those who can consistently anticipate the direction of the ball are considered extraordinary. During his professional career, Juno earned the nickname, the Genius of Prediction. Inspired by this concept, Hoyong gained a crucial insight. By carefully observing Seoyeon's posture and movements, he is able to predict where her bullets will go before she even fires them. Using this method, Hoyong steadily closes the distance between them while avoiding every strike. He finally lands a strike against Seoyeon, but she manages to block the attack with her gun. In that moment, she realizes something alarming. Hoyong's overall stats are higher than hers. Meanwhile, the rest of Hoyong's team has already finished dealing with the remaining enemies. Seeing this, Seoyeon calmly asks whether the return crystal's function is revival. Hoyong confirms her suspicion, explaining that the crystal brings players back after they fall. However, he also tells her that knowing this now will not change the outcome. Even if Seoyeon possesses a hidden skill capable of landing a powerful strike, Hoyong believes he can endure at least one attack. His plan is simple: accept some damage if necessary, and end the fight decisively. But just as he prepares to charge forward, Seoyeon suddenly spends her gold to upgrade her firing skill to level 4. The situation becomes extremely dangerous in an instant. Realizing the threat, Hoyong attempts to attack before she can fire again. Unfortunately, he cannot reach her in time and is struck by her strike. Seeing him injured, the rest of his teammates immediately rush toward the altar to support him. Despite the final struggle, the third-floor mission ultimately ends in victory for Hoyong's group. Seoyeon, however, looks disappointed because even after contributing so much during the battle, he receives only a small amount of gold as a reward. Meanwhile, Hoyong reflects on the final moment of the fight. Although he did not expect Seoyeon's rapid consecutive strikes, he managed to land a strike with his sword at the same time she fired, landing a critical strike before the battle ended. As Seoyeon begins to fade away after being defeated, she calmly states that she will remember Hoyong's name. Afterward, Seoyeon, Yizil, and Secheng step forward to occupy the altar, officially securing their victory. Hoyong silently hopes that he will never encounter Seoyeon again. However, just as the group begins to relax, a dimensional portal suddenly opens nearby. On the other side, they can see all the members of the defeated enemy group. Alongside them stands a terrifying disaster monster, which they must now face. The system soon announces the rule of the disaster event. The targets will be players who did not achieve a single elimination during the battle. Hearing this, the trapped players desperately beg Hoyong's group for help. Yizil, unable to ignore their pleas, steps forward and reaches toward the portal in an attempt to assist them. But the moment her hand touches the portal, a powerful force pushes her back. Unable to intervene, Hoyong's group watches in shock as the disaster monster begins eliminating the targeted players one by one. The brutal scene leaves everyone stunned, including Hoyong himself. After the disaster event finishes, the system makes another announcement. It reveals that one player has survived and that the group structure will now be reorganized. The moment Hoyong hears this, he immediately realizes who it must be. Just then, Seoyin appears once again as the system announces the creation of a new group. At that moment, Hoyong finally understands the uneasy feeling he had earlier, and it fills him with intense frustration. After clearing the previous stage, the players are transported to the 4th floor, which appears to be a vast abandoned city. The system soon announces the mission conditions. In 6 hours, a disaster will descend upon the cursed city. To survive, the players must hunt monsters that appear throughout the area and secure an escape portal. The rules are strict. Escape portals will appear randomly whenever monsters are defeated, but only 20 portals will exist in total. Additionally, each portal is bound to the player who created it, meaning no one is allowed to use another person's portal. Some members of the group feel relieved after hearing this mission. Compared to the intense battles they faced on the 2nd and 3rd floors, fighting monsters seems much simpler. Since their group only has 13 people and there are 20 portals available, they initially believe their chances of escaping are quite good. Seong also seems excited because this floor will allow him to level up further. However, Yizil raises an important concern. Juno agrees with her reasoning. If a single player opens multiple portals, it could prevent others from escaping. In fact, the existence of extra portals might actually be a trap set by the tower. Because of that possibility, they decide on a strict rule. No matter how many monsters someone defeats, they must immediately leave once their portal appears. Everyone agrees to stop hunting and escape right away when their portal opens. Seong does not look very pleased with that decision, and Yizil quickly notices his expression. When she asks him about it, he immediately denies having any issue. Watching the group cooperate and make decisions together makes Hoyong feel satisfied. After everything they have endured, they are finally starting to act like a true team. Unfortunately, there is still one major problem: Seoyin. She openly refuses to follow the group's plan and declares that she will move on her own. Her attitude makes the others extremely angry, and some even consider confronting her together. To understand the tension, the scene briefly shifts back 12 hours earlier, right after Seoyin was forced into their group. At that time, Seong attempted to challenge her, but she effortlessly knocked him down with a single punch. The sudden display of strength shocked everyone. Seeing this, Hoyong immediately warned her not to cause trouble within their territory. Hoyong had already gone through great lengths to eliminate what he believed was a potential star killer, yet he never expected a real one to appear right in front of him. Seoyin proves that she is highly skilled in combat, even without using her gun. When Hoyong tries to speak with her, he suddenly senses a strong killing intent aimed directly at him. Instinctively, he leaps backward in confusion. A notification immediately appears on his system panel. It informs him that Seoyin has designated him as her main target. The system also explains that Hoyong has officially been acknowledged as a target, which grants him access to a special guide related to the Star Killer system. Reading this information leaves him deeply shocked. The story then returns to the present on the 4th floor. Meanwhile, Seong is battling an orc. After Seong defeats the monster, an escape portal opens nearby. However, Seong has no intention of leaving yet. Instead, he wants to continue hunting monsters to gain more experience and levels. He looks around cautiously before quietly trying to slip away from the portal. Unfortunately for him, Hoyong had already predicted this behavior. Having secretly followed him, Hoyong appears and catches him in the act. Seong desperately tries to convince Hoyong not to mention the portal to the others, but Hoyong sees right through his excuses. Without hesitation, Hoyong kicks Seong straight into the portal, forcing him to leave the floor. Hoyong had been monitoring Seong precisely because he expected him to try something like this. Now that the situation is resolved, Hoyong can focus on the real problem ahead. The system guide he received earlier revealed an important detail about Star Killers. Their full abilities will awaken on a specific event known as the Day of Red. On that day, if Seoyeon manages to defeat Hoyong, she will receive an enormous reward. Because of this, Hoyong realizes that he must grow stronger as quickly as possible before that day arrives. He has no idea when the Day of Red will occur, but he is certain it will favor the Star Killer and likely result in many casualties. Determined to prevent that outcome, Hoyong begins hunting orcs to increase his strength. Even though he is confident he could eliminate every monster on this floor given enough time, he cannot afford to do so because not all of his teammates have escaped yet. On top of that, he must remain cautious, knowing that Seoyeon is somewhere on the same floor, hunting monsters as well. While exploring the ruined city, Hoyong suddenly notices a foul smell in the air. At that moment, another system guide appears. It explains that orcs carrying a strong rotting odor are the ones that generate escape portals when defeated. Realizing this, Hoyong quickly tracks down the source of the smell, locates the special orc, and defeats it, successfully securing an escape portal for himself. Some time passes, and before long, Seoyeon somehow ends up exploring the city alongside Hoyong. During this time, Hoyong pretends that he still hasn't found an escape portal. He even acts as if he is incredibly unlucky in missions that depend on random chance. According to him, this kind of luck-based mission is the worst possible scenario. However, the truth is quite different. Hoyong is deliberately avoiding the orcs that generate portals. Because Seoyeon must eliminate Hoyong on the Day of Red, she cannot allow him to disappear from the floor before that event happens. As a result, she has no choice but to let Hoyong be the one who defeats the portal-generating orcs. If Hoyong were to fall here without securing a portal, it would be bad for her as well. In reality, Hoyong has already secured a portal for himself earlier. At that moment, Hoyong receives a system notification informing him that another player has successfully secured a portal. This means that only 5 portals remain. The news makes him feel relieved, as it suggests that the group's escape is progressing smoothly. Even so, Hoyong continues pretending to complain about his terrible luck, loudly grumbling about how unlucky he is in these kinds of games. His constant complaining begins to irritate Seoyeon, and she eventually threatens him, telling him to stop talking and focus on hunting monsters instead. As they continue moving through the ruined city, Hoyong takes down several orcs along the way. Each time he defeats one, he experiences a strange mixture of emotions. At one point, Hoyong realizes that Seoyeon actually seems worried about him. The situation feels ironic to him. He never expected to see the person who intends to eliminate him showing concern for his survival. Curious, he asks her why she appears so worried when he is the one who still hasn't found a portal. His question clearly startles her, as if she has been caught hiding something. She quickly denies being worried about him. Hoyong then casually asks how many portals she has opened so far. Seoyeon answers that she has already opened 5 portals. Even though that number is quite high, it is still within a reasonable margin. Seoyeon has 5 portals, and Hoyong has 1. If the remaining 11 teammates each opened 1 portal, that would account for 17 portals in total, leaving 3 portals remaining. From this, Hoyong begins to suspect that perhaps the only players still left on the 4th floor are the 2 of them. Pretending to grow anxious as the time limit approaches, Hoyong suddenly suggests that they split up to search more efficiently. Acting worried about the limited time left, he runs off, saying he will try to find a portal on his own and telling Seoyeon to leave first. But instead of leaving, Seoyeon tells him to wait. Hoyong stops and asks why she is wasting his time. For a moment, she stays silent, seemingly gathering the courage to say something important. Her unusual behavior makes Hoyong feel uneasy, and he instinctively tries to run away. However, she quickly grabs his shirt and stops him. Then she admits the real problem. She has forgotten the location of the portal she opened earlier. The confession surprises Hoyong. It turns out that Seoyeon has an extremely poor sense of direction. After some searching, Hoyong eventually locates the portal she created, and together they finally return to the tower. As soon as Hoyong arrives, Seoyeon runs toward him in excitement. The sudden approach startles Hoyong, and he instinctively punches Seoyeon in the face. Watching the scene, Seoyeon casually comments that Seoyeon resembles an orc. Hoyong agrees with the comparison, but quietly tells her there was no need to say it out loud. Soon after, Yiziel and Juno warmly greet Hoyong as well. Juno even attempts to greet Seoyin politely by offering a handshake, but just like before, she completely ignores him. Meanwhile, Seoyin slowly stands up, still annoyed. He mutters that Seoyin should have been left behind on the fourth floor. Hearing that, Seoyin calmly tells him to be quiet. Seoyin continues arguing with her, which makes Hoyong briefly wonder if leaving her behind might have been the simpler choice. However, he quickly dismisses that thought. It would make little sense for a star killer, someone specially recognized by the system, to disappear simply because she got lost. Instead, Hoyong decides to treat the situation as an opportunity to make Seoyin feel somewhat indebted to him. Even though he must remain cautious around her, he cannot help noticing that her reactions at times are unexpectedly a little cute. Since he knows she will not act against him until the day of Red arrives, he decides it is safe for now. For a brief moment, the group enjoys a peaceful atmosphere together. But that calm is suddenly shattered when Kumkum, the mysterious rabbit monster, appears. The moment Seoyin sees him, she immediately fires her gun. Not only the group members, but even Hoyong himself are shocked by how suddenly she shoots the rabbit without any warning. Instead, he instantly reappears right in front of Seoyin and delivers a powerful kick that sends her crashing into the wall. Based on the rabbit's overwhelming stats, Hoyong quickly realizes that the creature actually held back during the attack. This makes him wonder if the Star Killer holds special importance within the tower system. After the brief clash, the rabbit monster finally calms down. Looking at the group, he casually announces that it is time for them to proceed to the next mission. Before sending the players to the next floor, the mysterious rabbit monster, Kumkum, transforms the lobby's background into a massive library. Once the environment changes, he gives them a new instruction. From now on, each person must choose one book from the library. Kumkum explains that the book they select could either become something incredibly useful that helps them survive, or something completely useless that could lead them to danger. Everything depends on their own judgment, so they must choose carefully. There is also an important rule. No one is allowed to reveal the contents of their book to anyone else. In addition, all of the books will disappear once the mission on the fifth floor begins. After delivering this explanation, Kumkum casually leaves the library. The moment he disappears, everyone quickly rushes to the section related to their own class in hopes of finding the most helpful book. It makes sense, since searching through unrelated categories would only waste precious time. However, Hoyong's situation is different. The system guide specifically recommends that he pick a certain book from the novel section, a book titled SSS Rank Returner's Monopoly of Connections. After finding the book, Hoyong immediately begins to regret his choice just by reading the title again. Still, since the guide recommended it, he assumes there must be a reason behind it and decides to read a few pages. But the moment he starts reading, he regrets it even more. The story seems like one of those cheap, mass-produced fantasy novels. Looking around, Hoyong notices that the other group members are selecting books related to their own abilities and combat classes. Seeing this makes him feel as if he has already made the wrong decision. His regret grows even stronger. While observing the room, Hoyong suddenly hears an unusual noise. When he turns to look, he sees Secheng happily setting up a small tent. The strange scene leaves Hoyong confused, wondering what kind of book Secheng could have possibly chosen. Soon after, he hears loud banging sounds coming from another direction. When he looks over, he sees Seoyin angrily striking something while muttering complaints about the rabbit monster Kumkum. Seeing her in such a mood, Hoyong wisely decides to stay away. Not long after, the allotted time runs out. In the very next moment, everyone suddenly finds themselves inside a classroom filled with unfamiliar students. Strangely, all of the people in the room appear frozen in place, as if time itself has stopped. Even more surprising, the group members realize that their appearances have changed. They have all become younger. It soon becomes clear that they have been sent back to their student days in order to match the setting of the next mission. Hoyong also looks mostly unchanged, while Yiziel somehow appears even cuter in her younger form. Juno looks similar to his normal self as well. However, the person who catches Hoyong's attention the most is the girl sitting next to him. She turns out to be Seoyin, but this time she is wearing glasses and has long purple hair. The moment Hoyong says her name, she reacts angrily and accidentally breaks her glasses in the process. Embarrassed, she immediately looks away from him. Watching her reaction, Hoyong quietly concludes that she really has not changed much at all. Suddenly, the announcement box activates and Kumkum's voice echoes through the room. He briefly comments about youth before explaining the details of the fifth floor mission. This stage is a role-playing scenario set in another dimension where both humans and monsters exist. From this moment onward, all of them will act as cadets at an academy that trains monster hunters. For the next 4 days, various quests will appear periodically. The players must complete these quests successfully. If they fail, they will be sent to a death mission as punishment. Although Hoyong has survived such a mission before, he knows that most normal players would struggle to survive it. Hearing this condition makes him regret his earlier decision even more. Instead of choosing a combat manual or sword technique book, he picked a seemingly useless novel. After explaining the rules, Kumkum uses his authority to grant them the memories required for this role-playing scenario. Instantly, new memories begin flowing into Hoyong and the other group members' minds. For Hoyong, the memories he receives are actually the same story he had just read in the novel SSS Rank Returner's Monopoly of Connections. Once the memories settle in, Kumkum announces that the quest will begin after the current class ends, and then he leaves the dimension. At the same time inside the classroom finally begins to move again, and the professor continues teaching as if nothing unusual has happened. Now fully aware of the situation, Hoyong realizes that they are essentially extra characters inside the story of the novel. His attention soon shifts to the main character of that story, Yunam. Yunam is also a returner who knows the future. Because of this knowledge, he was able to build powerful connections with influential people and locations, eventually becoming the strongest individual. During the lecture, the professor writes a difficult question on the board and asks if anyone would like to answer it. As a reward, he promises store points to anyone who solves it correctly. Normally, this is the type of question that ordinary students would never be able to answer. In the original story, this moment was supposed to belong to Yunam. But now, Hoyong is here. Without hesitation, Hoyong raises his hand and not only answers the question correctly, but also explains the historical background behind it. His detailed explanation shocks Yunam, while the professor becomes extremely pleased after discovering what he believes to be a genius student in the class. At that moment, Hoyong finally understands why the guide recommended that novel to him in the first place. There is no need for sword manuals or martial arts techniques. Instead, Hoyong now possesses the knowledge of the story itself. And that means every valuable connection that Yunam was originally destined to obtain, Hoyong plans to claim all of them first. After the class finally ends, everyone leaves the academy building together. As they walk outside, Jaeyoung asks Hoyong how he managed to answer the professor's difficult question so easily. Hoyong calmly explains that the information came from the memories they were given for the role-playing scenario. Soon after, Yiziel wonders when the first quest will begin. Based on the novel Hoyong read earlier, he believes the quest should start very soon. Just as he predicted, a system notification appears in front of them. The mission is to clear the dungeon located beside Building B37 of the Academy. The moment Hoyong reads the quest details, he immediately recognizes the location. According to the story of the novel, the boss monster in that dungeon drops an extremely valuable item, one that will play a major role later in the future. In the original story, that reward was supposed to belong to the protagonist, Yunam. However, Hoyong has no intention of letting that happen. Determined to claim the reward himself, he urges everyone to hurry toward the dungeon. When they arrive, they unexpectedly run into Yunam. Seeing them there, Yunam is clearly shocked and asks how they even knew about the dungeon's location. Hoyong ignores the question entirely and immediately begins fighting the orcs inside. Yunam finds the situation very strange. He cannot understand how these students discovered the dungeon so quickly. What surprises him even more is their strength. As he watches, several of his classmates, especially Seoyin and Hoyong, are defeating the monsters with remarkable speed and efficiency. Yunam is certain that if such powerful individuals existed, he would have remembered them from his previous life. Yet they appear to be completely new variables. Realizing that they might steal the dungeon reward right in front of him, Yunam quickly summons his weapon and joins the battle. With a single strike, he eliminates multiple monsters at once. The overwhelming display of power shocks everyone watching. Hoyong immediately understands that Yunam will not give up the dungeon reward easily. From this point onward, it becomes a race to see who can secure victory first. Clearing the quest itself will not be difficult with their current momentum. However, to earn the right to challenge the boss monster, a player must defeat the highest number of orcs. The person with the most eliminations will gain the opportunity to enter the boss room. Right now, Yunam is still stronger than Hoyong in terms of raw power. However, Hoyong has a different advantage, his exceptional ability to locate enemies quickly. Using that skill, he begins tracking down groups of orcs and eliminating them as fast as possible. Seeing Hoyong pushing himself so hard, Seoyin refuses to fall behind and also begins hunting orcs aggressively. In the end, only 3 people, Hoyong, Seoyin, and Yunam, are actively eliminating the orcs, while the rest of the group watches their intense competition. As the battle continues, Yziel notices that Hoyong appears far more desperate than usual. Juno, moved by what he believes to be Hoyong's determination, becomes emotional and declares that Hoyong must be fighting this hard because he wants to prevent his teammates from being sent to a death mission. Hearing this, the other members begin to feel both suspicious and inspired at the same time. Believing Hoyong is fighting for their sake, they gain new motivation to support him. Ironically, Hoyong has no idea what they are talking about. Eventually, every orc in the dungeon is defeated and the entrance to the boss room finally appears. However, the player who earned the right to challenge the boss is none other than Yunam. Despite giving it his all, Hoyong was unable to surpass him. For a moment, Hoyong carefully considers his next move. He refuses to give up on the reward so easily. Stepping forward, he stops Yunam and demands that he hand over the right to challenge the boss monster. To persuade him, Hoyong presents an unexpected offer. He asks Yunam a single question. Does he want to know the way to end the endless cycle of regressions? Hearing this shocking claim immediately makes Yunam suspicious and cautious. But one thing is clear, Hoyong has no intention of backing down now.